sugar. Oh, honey, honey. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you.
Hi there, I'm Kristen from Frosted Bake Shop, and welcome back to Cookie Kit in a Box. This week we're going to be working on Cinco de Mayo themed cookies. We'll be working on 3 cactus designs, 2 lime slices, a delicious looking taco, and a piñata. If you're new to cookie design, I suggest you pause this video and jump over to my other video that'll teach you how to set up your cookie decorating station for your most successful cookie decorating. It also will give you instruction on how to cut your piping bags accurately so that you get the best lines out of your piping bag. For this particular class today, what I suggest is you cut your white colored piping bag fairly small because that's going to be used just for details. I also suggest that you do your dark green, your yellow thick, and your red all the same size, and you're going to want those fairly small because they're going to be for outlining, but they're all going to be used on your piñata cookies, so you want them to be the same thickness when you're decorating that one particular design. So if you're all ready to go, let's jump into our first cookie. So before we start, I'd like to just go through what you should have in your kit when you open your box. You'll see that you have the class cookies, 3 cactus, 2 lime slices, a large taco, and of course your piñata. You should have a couple of toothpicks. You're going to have your red, greens, yellow, and white icing. Please take a note that you have your red, darker green, and yellow icings are your thick icings for outlining and some of your decorating. And then your white, your lighter lime green, and your yellow are going to be your flooding icings. If we go ahead and open up our decoration container, you'll see we have a small flower that's actually going to be used to decorate our piñata. We have a large flower that's going to be used for our cactus. We also have our mustache, which is very, very delicate. So just be very cautious when you're handling it that it is very fragile. We also have our small beef brown royal icing decorations, and of course our cheddar cheese for decorating our taco. You're going to want to make sure that you set those decorations off to the side of your decorating area, and we're only going to pull them back for when it's time to use them so that we don't take the chance of ruining them or spilling any royal icing on them. So if you haven't, go ahead, set yourself up, and we'll start decorating our first cookie. The first cookie that we're going to be working on today is actually our medium cactus cookie. And the reason that we're working on this one first is because we're actually going to be flooding the top and bottom portions separately, and we want them to look like 2 distinct areas. So we're going to go ahead and flood the bottom of our pot first. We're going to work on some of our other cookies, and then we're going to come back to do the top of our cactus. So just a reminder before you're working on your cookies that when you're working with your icing bag, you want to make sure that you've pushed your icing up towards the top of your bag and twist it. I know you have heat sealed bags, so it's not going to come out the top, but you also want to have all that icing down at the bottom so that you get a nice consistent row of icing that comes out of your bag. So let's work on our cactus. We're going to work on an outline of the pot first and then go ahead and flood in the rest of it. We're going to start at one corner of where the indentation of the pot and the cactus meet, and we're going to just do a row of icing straight across from side to side. Then we're going to work on the rest. We're going to just follow that curve, and remember, when you're outlining, you're not touching the tip of your bag to your cookie. You're literally just using the top to direct where your icing falls. This is pretty thick outline icing, so you'll see it's gonna hold up well when you're draping it. So that's our outline. Now we're gonna go back and we're gonna flood the inside. And if you have seen my previous videos, you'll know to flood, I always start with a row around the outside. Then I'll do another row. And then I form a grid. And then I go back and fill in the windows of that grid. And I just find that that usually gives me a nice finish. And if you have areas like this that haven't run into the edges, use your toothpick and go around, and then I just go back in. And I do that just to get rid of any air bubbles or any areas that might not have been as even in my flood as I wanted to. So we're gonna put that one aside and we're gonna come back to it to do the top of the cactus. Since we already have that yellow out, we're gonna move on to our large taco. We're gonna use the same outline, so make sure you're using your thick outlining color. And as you can see, I went ahead and marked just so you can kind of see the area that we're gonna use. This will be our taco shell. And then in here, we're gonna go back later and do all of our toppings. So you wanna make sure you have enough area so that you can go ahead and put all the different things that would actually go inside a taco. So you're gonna just use what I drew as a guide. This should be generally the shape and we'll go straight across our taco shape. And again, just flood it in the way we had just done that. So around the edges to meet up with that. Now this is a pretty big taco, so I'm gonna actually add my grid so it's a little bit smaller windows than if I just did it in quarters the way I previously had. But again, doesn't have to be exactly the way I do it as long as you're finding that you're getting a good result. And I'm gonna go back and just make sure that my icing has no bubbles and is even. The next cookie we're gonna work on is going to be our cactus. Our large cactus, I should say, because we do have 3 that we're gonna be decorating. Now you're gonna use your light green icing to flood your cactus. Now keep in mind that this flood is much runnier than that outline that we just used. So you're gonna wanna leave space so that it doesn't run over the outside. So as you can see, I'm gonna start my outline much further in my cookie, so that when it starts to spread, which flooding always will, it's not gonna run off of my cookie. You will see it will get closer to the edge, but I don't want it to run over. And now, because this is a unique shape, I'm gonna kind of outline it again, but instead of doing a square grid, you'll see I'll fill in some of those sides of the cactus. So now I'll kind of quarter it this way so that I have smaller areas to fill in. And this is a pretty big cookie, so I'm just gonna give it a tap. We'll work on our smaller cactus cookie now. I want you to make sure that you have your white icing ready to go, because what we're gonna do is add some spikes with that white flood. When you cut your icing bag for this one, you wanna cut it very small. So again, this is going to be not as close to the edges. And notice when I'm doing these bumps, I'm actually tapping down after each so that it stops the flow of my icing before I go around that next curve. That'll help give you some definition on those bumps. Okay, and I'm gonna just spread that icing a little further on some of these areas. We're gonna go back now with our white and add some of those cactus spikes. So I'm just gonna do lines in random directions. So that they look like the spikes of a cactus, and not too many, but you want them to kind of be in different angles. And that's just really to give it some character. Now we're going to move on to our limes, which we're going to do at the same time because we're using the same colors and decorating. To start your lime, you're going to use your darker green icing, and we're going to just do an outline to look like the outside of a lime. And remember, this is thick icing, so you can go right up to your edge and it's not going to be going anywhere. Now we're going to just add a row of flooding white to the inside of that dark green outline. We're going to use our lime green flood to fill in. And just be careful that you're not going over the white. And remember, this green is pretty thin, so it is going to spread. And you can always use your toothpick to make sure that you fill in any areas on your cookie that might not be covered. So I'm just going to gently use my toothpick to make sure that that runs right into the white. Okay. Now I'm going to go back with my white and make the segment lines that you see on a lime slice. So we're going to divide this, and they're not going to necessarily be perfectly even, but just start from where you think the center is. Okay. And then I'm gonna add some seeds. And I'm gonna use my toothpick to kind of pull them a little bit. Okay, we can do the second one now that we know what we're doing. I'm sure you'll be able to go a little bit faster. Okay, so now our lines are done, so we can actually push those off to the side. We're gonna go back to our medium cactus cookie, and we're going to run a straight line across where this would meet the pot. And you can see we have a lot of empty spots there, so we're gonna just use our toothpick and fill in. Okay, now this top, we're gonna go back later and add a flower, but I'm hoping that the green dries enough that when we do that, we don't crush in our cactus. So let's work on our piñata. You wanna be careful when you're piping your lines that they run straight across. What we can do is actually use one of our icings to mark off some lines. If you have a food safe marker, you can go ahead and use that also. So your two options are you can either use a little bit of icing and just sort of mark off lines. These are going to be covered up, so it really doesn't matter. It's really just to give you a guide so that when you're doing your lines, they're nice and straight for planning. Okay? I barely used any icing. It's really just so that you have a nice guide. We're gonna start with our yellow, we're gonna move into our red, and then we're gonna do our green. So make sure that each of your bags, the top is cut and ready to go so that you can do this pretty efficiently. We're just going to be piping straight lines up, down, so that you get like a zigzag. So your next row, which will be red, you're gonna wanna make sure when you pipe it, it comes right up over the top of that previous row because you want it to look layered. So we'll start where our line was that we drew. And notice when I'm going back and forth, I'm kind of coming just right up over the top of my yellow. Not too far. You really just want them just barely touching. Okay? And make sure that we get over to our tail. Now we're going to be working on our green, and make sure you're using that thick, darker green icing. And now we're gonna just continue this until we get to the top. And we wanna repeat the pattern. Now, I added a little flower to your decorations as an extra detail. If you want to add that, you can. If you don't like it, you don't have to. I'm going to add it just because I want you to see what it would look like. So I'm going to put it right by the ear as an extra detail. If you have time to spare, now would be a good time to stop, go have a snack, or take a break for 30 to 45 minutes and let your cookies set up for a little bit before you continue to work on them. If you don't have that time, you can continue. Just be cautious when handling your cookies that you don't push into the top of the frosting as they're not firmed up yet. In your kit, you're going to have your taco meat, your ground beef. You're also going to have your shredded cheese, and then we're going to use our icing for our thick red icing and our thick green icing to have it look like your tomatoes and your lettuce. You're really just going to be using those other icings as the glue that holds these extra parts. So let's go ahead and add those first. And for your lettuce, you can kind of just do shreds. To be creative and fun, so you can do it however you think it looks most interesting for your taco. Now I'm going to add some of my tomatoes, which when I make tacos, I usually cube them, so I'm gonna kind of make them look almost square. But again, you don't have to be too particular, it's not a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and add my beef. If you look at these decorations, you'll see some of them are naturally wider, thinner. So you wanna try to place them in places that make the most sense with your taco. So this is the thinnest part. So I'm gonna go ahead and add it here where it's narrow. I'm gonna add my thicker parts here. Here. And if you're finding that you want to place it on a part that doesn't have any icing, really doesn't matter what color, because once you push it down, it's going to cover that up. See that? And then for this one, okay, now I'm going to go back and just sort of fill in anything that's not colored in yet. Now, you can really just sprinkle your cheese on however you want. Make sure you're just giving them a little pat so they don't go ahead and come flying off your cookie. I like that just the way it is. I think it has enough toppings, and we definitely know it looks like a taco. So we're gonna say that one's done and move on to our next cookie. When we decorate our large cactus cookie, we're going to outline the cactus and then give it some wavy lines to have it look a little interesting. And we're gonna add our mustache. Keep in mind that this is still pretty wet, so you have two options. You can either add your mustache now or wait until this sets up. I'd give it a good probably 4 or 5 hours and add a little dot of icing to the back of your mustache and add it at that point, or you can do it now. It's up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. So we want to make sure when we're doing our outline that, again, you're not pushing into the top of your cookie. You're just draping the icing. Touch the icing to the top of your cookie and just follow around the edge. When we get to this corner, I'm gonna stop because I don't want it to go any crazy way on me. Now I'm gonna start here because I think it's easier to pipe in this direction, but you can continue that line. Okay, we're gonna go around the top. I'm gonna turn my cookie so that you guys can see better while I'm piping. Now, if that happens to you, it's not a big deal. We can go back very easily and fix that. Okay, not a problem. So now we have the full outline done. What I'm gonna add here is a line straight down, connecting the center part of my cookie so that this looks like the main part of our cactus. We're gonna add one line in the center, kind of dividing this and just giving it sort of a unique curve for interest. And again, this one sort of in the center there with a unique curve. We're gonna do 3 lines on the middle part. The first is gonna go straight. The first is gonna go straight down my cookie. On each side, we're gonna give it a slight curve to follow the shape of that cactus. So we're gonna start at the top, we're gonna angle it towards the outside and sort of give it a curve in. And we're gonna do just the opposite on the opposite side. Fix that. Now, if you want to add your mustache now, if you feel comfortable placing it, the icing that you just used for your piping will act like a glue. If you don't feel comfortable, you can go back and add it later. Really, it's honestly up to you. But just so you know where you're gonna put it, what I would do is sort of line up where these arms are and put the mustache right in the center of that. Okay? And that little guy is done. We're gonna work on our small cactus now, and we're gonna add some of the lines to have it have a little bit more character. I'm actually not going to outline him fully. I'm just gonna add lines coming down in each of these segments. And we're gonna do it on a curve. I'm gonna kind of do each of these. I like the look of that better. Okay, and now we'll just repeat on the opposite side. So we're gonna follow our outline of our cookie here, and then just bring it at an angle towards the bottom. Now, as we talked about for the mustache, if you don't want to do this part now, you don't have to. That flooding is still pretty wet. So just be cautious that you're not pushing down this flour into your cookie. What you do is just add a little bit of your icing as a glue. And I'm gonna add it right in the middle of that top bump. Barely pushing down. And now that cactus is all done. We're going to detail our cactus first, then we're going to detail our pot, and then we can go ahead and add our flower. So we're going to outline the full cactus first. And then we're gonna just add some curve marks. So we're gonna do 4 lines, sort of thinking what's the center here. And we're gonna actually add some small, think of them like X's, to sort of look like the spikes. Just add some texture, which I think always helps to make it look a little bit more 3D and interesting. When you do your pot, you have a couple options. You can either just outline it in your yellow, or if you want to do something really vibrant, you can add some detailing with your other colors. It's up to you and however creative and how much time you want to spend on it. I'm going to show you the basic. You're going to go straight across your pot where it hits the cactus. Make sure you're using that outline thick icing. And then we're going to just follow the curve and come straight back and add your another curve. And that's the top of your pot. I'm going to add my sides. And then I'm going to just do a curve here at the bottom to add a little bit more dimension. Now we're going to work on our flower. We're going to do 5 petals, and some of that is going to come over this cactus, so you just have to be careful that you're not pushing into it. You want it to sort of rest on top. So I'm going to show you how we're going to sort of outline our flower. There's 5 petals, so you want to outline each of the 5 petals and then go back in and fill it in with that red icing. And you can add a little bit of detail in the center with the thick yellow. And I'm just going to do 3 dots for the center. Okay, I'm going to show you a quick little tip on how to mix a couple colors, and we're going to just add a little speckling to our taco the way you'd see if you opened a box of shells for a taco kit. So I'm going to just make a brownish tan color by mixing some of my red and my darker green thick icing. Just going to use a little butter knife to mix up a brown. And again, it's just going to be a little bit of a tan color so that we have a little bit of a difference of color on a taco shell for some interest. And I'm just gonna take my toothpick and just do some speckles.
Sugar, oh honey, honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting.
Well, I hope you had a great time decorating your set of cookies. If you completed your whole set, you would have learned how to outline your cookies and flood them properly. We also did some detailing work using our thick detailing icing. And one of the other things that we worked on today was a wet on wet royal icing technique to do our lime wedges. Hope you had a great time, and we'll see you back here at the Frosted Bake Shop. Thank you.
Of this feeling too, I just can't believe it's true. Ah, sugar. Oh, honey, honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. Oh, honey, oh, sugar, sugar.
When we add our polka dots, we're going to start with 3 evenly spaced dots at the bottom. Then we're going to move up and do 2